مرحبا يا رفاق، هذا ما قاله اندرو عن الصهيوني بن شابيرو في مقابلته الجديدة مع بيرس. لنلقي نظرة على ذلك.
Let me turn to Ben Shapiro. He said, let me assure you, as someone who's not pimped women and bragged about it, that morality requires that those who rape women and kidnap women must be eradicated, not negotiated with. He says, on my show, I won't be lectured on morality and toughness like Andrew Tate. His great idea of toughness and morality is pimping women and bragging about it on air and then trying to quasi-walk it back while simultaneously maintaining many of the same positions and flexing his biceps. Listen, everyone should be able to tweet whatever it is they want. I'm all for an open discourse, even with people who I think are dead wrong on a lot of issues. But Andrew Tate is dead wrong on a lot of these issues. And the particularly ridiculous posturing about being yes, you're very tough when you want people to make peace with terrorists who just murdered their children, very, very tough. What do you say to that?
So Ben is a warmonger. Ben has been wrong on basically every single issue you can name. He was with you with the vaccine and every other war. Ben is always calling for other people's young men to go and die in some war. He seems to love it. I don't know if he has short man syndrome, but he's always behind his desk calling about how important it is that big, strong men like me go and die. And the reason he tweeted that and said that is because when Hamas and Israel, at the very early in the conflict, I think it was 3 days in, were discussing possible peace talks, he tweeted, no, absolutely not, fuck them, kill them all. And I said, Ben, as a man who's done his own fighting, because I've had a life of pain and violence, listen to me. Peace is always worth a conversation. What I said is that we should always be prepared to at least discuss peace. He, because he's a warmonger, said, no, peace is not worth a conversation. You're this, you're that, da-da. Because he's always sitting behind his desk. He must have a booster chair, and he's always running his mouth trying to invoke violence and call for war. And I find it kind of hypocritical because a man who's so small he would die if he was slapped on the street, sitting behind a desk and screaming for other people to be annihilated, I think is kind of, it's worse than hypocritical. It's insane.
I believe if he was sitting here listening to this, he would say that what he's screaming for is for Jewish people in Israel to be able to defend themselves. And he's a Jewish man.
All Ben does is call for war. And I agree. Defending yourself.
That's not all he does.
That's all he does. And calling for war and defending yourself is very different than genocide. And Ben, like I said, overall, most of Ben's worldviews and mine probably align. We don't align on the religious sect, we don't rely on the religious points, fine. But our overall worldviews about how society should function probably align on many of the key issues. I don't have a beef with Ben, and I don't watch his show, and I have no idea what he talks about a lot of the time. But what I do know is every time I turn it on, he's calling for someone else's son to go and die in a ditch somewhere for his interests. And I don't like people who are not advocates for peace. Blessed are the peacemakers, said Candace, who is far more intelligent than Ben will ever be. And she is completely right. He replied that rhetoric, starting an argument with me, when I said we should talk about peace. I say we should talk about peace. He calls for the death of civilians, and somehow we're asking why my point of view is seen as abstract. It's insane. Why can't we all just sit down and say the fighting must end? Why can't we do that?
بكل صدق أتفق مع نقاط أندرو تماما، لأن أمثال بين شابيرو وجوردن بيترسون منذ بداية الحرب حتى الآن ينشرون فيديوهات بشكل يومي يحرضون فيها على الخراب والدمار والانحياز إلى طرف دون على الآخر، ويخبرون الناس بأنه يجب الرد عليهم بالهجوم وحرقهم وقتلهم. كل هذه الأقوال تأتي من أشخاص يرتدون بذة قيمتها آلاف الدولارات ولم يخوضوا حربا من قبل، ولكن لو علم كل واحد منهم كما الخراب الذي تنتجه الحرب لكانوا من أوائل الدعاة إلى السلام. شاركني رأيك في تعليق، لأن آراءكم مهمة للغاية، ولا تتوقفوا عن دعم القضية. نراكم قريباً.